So I'm back with part two of the Backhoe story, I guess, and it's taken a little longer to get into part two than I anticipated. The holidays interceded, and that's quite all right. I hope you had a very Merry Christmas. I hope you're having a wonderful New Year. Here in Puerto Rico, Christmas is celebrated truly from November 1st. I mean, as soon as Halloween is over, they're right into Christmas. And it certainly extends through Epiphany, or Three Kings Day here, and which is January 6th, and even longer if they can. So fortunately for us, January 6th is on a Wednesday, so hey, we keep partying Thursday, Friday, and into the weekend. At least that's the plan. So anyway, this is the follow-up video, the second video on the problems with the backhoe. And where I left off was I'd driven it up and stopped it because I needed to cut a tree limb down in order to keep going forward. And I took a break because I was hungry and thirsty and hot and tired and pissed off and all of the rest. So just a quick break to eat and get something to drink and cut the limb down and whatnot. And the short story of this is, when I hop back in, I turn the key and I got nothing, absolutely nothing. Great, the thing won't start. And so it's clearly an electrical problem, and I hate electrical problems because there can be any number of causes for the symptoms that you're experiencing. Now, in this case, I turned the key and it was just completely dead, silence, no click, click, click kind of stuff. So I didn't think the problem was the battery, though that is a possibility. But other sources of the problem, causes for this, could be a bad ignition switch, a bad wiring from the ignition to the solenoid, actually, a bad solenoid, a bad starter, a bad ground somewhere. There are a host of possibilities here, and any one of them, any number of them could be, or any one of them, I guess, could be the cause. But my initial suspicion was that I had a bad electrical relay. And so, because there's no real way to test that, except replace that relay with another one and see if that does the trick, I also figured that's probably the best way to begin. So let's kind of go out to the backhoe, and I will explain what's going on and begin work on the relay. Here we go. Once again, the backhoe is stopped. It's sort of my fault. I turned it off after all. But here I am, and this is where I shut it down. There's a tree behind me. I might as well turn around. It's creaking, which is kind of interesting to hear. But let me get out of the way so you can see it. And I had to cut that limb off so that I could get through here, and that's fine. That was clearly not a problem. But at this point, I'd been working my tail off to get this backhoe here. It was taking longer than I anticipated. It was more difficult than I anticipated, simply because the straps, in fact, we'll walk around back, the straps here on the excavator bucket were, at least initially, pretty on a pretty steep angle here, so they weren't spread out very much, and as a result, it didn't really keep the excavator bucket centered very well. Eventually, I moved the straps from, well, right here out to the outriggers. Now the outriggers were up, but it was still a little further out. And the idea was to try and keep the excavator bucket pinned between these two straps. But when they're narrow, I couldn't exert a lot of force, in opposite directions there to keep it from swinging. So the backhoe would get a little off, out of plumb, right? Just driving around. The land is flat, but it can vary a little bit, and it would move a little, and then all of a sudden this bucket is perpendicular to the backhoe. I'm thinking, well, crap, that's not what I wanted. So I put it in neutral, engaged parking brake, hopped out, pushed this bucket back in line, and that takes a lot. I mean, the sucker's heavy, but there's no resistance to it, at least. But it swung perpendicular because that was now down slope. So I'm actually pushing it, uphill. Now it's not a steep hill, but it's enough that I worked my tail off. And it wasn't until pretty much the last time that I had to do this that I realized, Warner, you idiot, that's the reason that it's moving. Just drop an outrigger, on the side that it swung to, and raise that, the backhoe back up, level it out, and then raise it up, and sure enough, the excavator bucket just swung right back around, and then I could let the outrigger down, and everything's fine. I could tighten it up. So then it moved a little faster. But anyway, point of this is, once I got here and I had to cut that limb down, I'm hot, I'm tired, I'm thirsty, and I'm hungry, and I got to cut a limb down. So I figured I shut down the machine, maybe, and of course clearly it was a mistake, but maybe 5 minutes, right? Because I guzzled a bottle of water, I ate a PB&J, it doesn't take much, and it ain't much to cut that down. Hop back in, turn the key, and nothing. So it's not even a click, 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 dead battery kind of stuff. There is absolutely nothing. And what's going on is there's a safety relay in here that prevents you from starting the backhoe if the machine's not in neutral. It is in neutral. The problem is the safety relay's gone bad. And you may have some experience with something like this if you're watching this video. If you've ever ridden a riding mower, what folks in suburbia call a tractor, if you've ever ridden one of those, there's a safety switch on those as well. It's underneath the seat, and you actually have to sit in the seat before you can crank a riding mower up. And occasionally those switches will go bad. That's easy though. You know where that switch is. You just lift the seat up and there it is. And you can pop it out, replace it, and away you go. Or you can sometimes jump them and just sort of bypass the whole thing. I don't recommend it, but that's perhaps a possibility. Here, the issue is I don't know where that switch is. And so I've been hunting for it. And this means trying to find owner's manuals, service manuals, right, all of the rest for this machine, which is almost 40 years old. I've got them eventually. But they don't tell me where the part is. They'll tell me that, the service manual, for instance, will say, oh, well, the owner's manual will show you where that part is. Well, I now have the owner's manual. It doesn't show me where that part is. The service manual will give me a schematic, so I know what it's connected to. I even know the color of wires that it's connected to, and I've tried tracing those. That hasn't worked out all that well. So what I'm doing is sort of pulling the pieces apart so that I can try and find this switch. I believe the switch, we'll stop looking at me and look at the backhoe. I believe that the switch is actually behind the sort of instrument panel, instrument cluster, if I can call it that. And this is just a nightmare, as you can see. It's just this plastic thing. All of this is plastic. And, I got all of these wires and stuff that are still attaching this cowl to the column and all the rest. It's difficult to see what's in there. And when I pulled this apart, first thing I did, try and lift it up. That doesn't work. Let me climb up a little bit and you can see a little better. Oh, And so there's a, kind of the instrument cluster. There's the bottom of it. There are these guys. I hope you can see that. So these are the two stalks on the left and right of the column. The one on the left is I'll call it the gear selector. It switches between forward, neutral, and reverse. The one on the right runs turn signals and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of impossible to get this past that. I removed them, separated them out, and pulled them off the column. Still couldn't get this past, so I've had to cut through it a little bit. And I'll wind up drilling some holes and just cinching this up with wire when I put it back. But then, of course, the steering wheel was next, so I had to pull the steering wheel off of the column to get this thing up. And even having done all of that, it's still, all of the wires are connecting it, so I've got a little room to turn it around and peer in it. And I did that, but number one, it's a little dark in there, so I didn't have a light for it. And number two, my eyes are old. I had LASIK, and so I don't wear glasses any longer. But you lose the vision up close. So I've got cheaters. I've got reading glasses. So I brought my reading glasses. I brought a flashlight, and what I'm going to do is kind of slither around in these rather cramped quarters as best I can with a flashlight and my reading glasses, and I'll see if I can find that relay. I reached out to a parts supplier for this model of Backhoe. This is a JCB, and I said, hey, I've got a 1989 JCB 1550B, and here's the engine number, the serial number, which is a sequential number, so that just tells them when it was made. And I said, and I'm looking for this relay. And they sent back a sort of a parts list, right, a parts diagram, and they said, is it this one? Heck if I know. That's why I gave you the information on the Backhoe. You tell me. But it seemed to suggest that relay is, in fact, somewhere in this cowl, in this instrument cluster. So I'm gonna poke around and see if I can find it. Cross your fingers. So I'm back from visiting with Patty in Greensboro, North Carolina, and while I was there, I bought a part for this Backhoe, a safety relay, this guy, which I'm hoping is the part that's gone bad that is preventing the Backhoe from running. I've got a lot of work to do because I've disassembled a lot of stuff in a fashion, just to give me access to where this part goes. So I've got to swap these parts out and then carefully reassemble everything else and see if she cranks. Fingers crossed. Makes me wish I had someone else here, someone who could hold these for me while I took a picture of them. But I don't know if the camera will pick that up. So this is very clearly not the same part. Oh well, since it's easy enough to remove, I can simply bring this back with me. I wonder if I can find that part number there. Let's see. And we're back. So, yeah, the folks who sent me that relay screwed up. They've got my all the information about the Backhoe. They've got the date that it's manufactured. They've got the model of it. It's a 1550B. But more importantly, they have the serial number, and that serial number is sequential. Those serial numbers are sequential, so they know they not only know kind of roughly when it was built. They know, hey, that's this particular Backhoe. So I don't think there's any real excuse for them sending me the wrong part. I was not happy with it. But I also wasn't happy with it because they wouldn't ship them to Puerto Rico. So as I mentioned, I had that shipped to me in Greenville, North Carolina, because that's where, excuse me, Greensboro, North Carolina, because that's where Patty was doing travel nursing, and I could just put the thing in my luggage and fly home with it, which is what I did. But now I'm back in Puerto Rico, and they sent me the wrong part. I'm thinking, rats, how do I get this? So short of it is, I send them photos of the original, actually of the two side by side, so they can see how they really screwed up. And I send photos of the original relay, close-up photos, and I've got a tape measure out so they can see the dimensions of it and the pattern of the connectors on it and whatnot. And they finally write back to me and they go, yeah, we think we've got what you need. We'll get it to you. But of course, they wouldn't ship it to Puerto Rico, so I had to send it to somebody in the States, somebody in Virginia, who then had to turn around and send it to me, and it's once again took a long time. That wound up being the right part, but it wasn't the cause of the problem. So it made sense to pursue this as a possibility. The symptoms were kind of more in line with that than, say, a dead battery, but not the case. So now I'm thinking it could be a bad solenoid or it could be a bad starter. And the way that you test to see if it's a bad solenoid is you bypass it. You bypass the ignition switch, excuse me. That is, you jump the solenoid directly to the battery, so just straight in. And what you're listening for, what you're listening for, if you do this right, is a click. So you need to have the starter disconnected, the solenoid, you jump directly to the battery, and you listen for that click. And it should click because the solenoid is an electromagnet. Anyway, the short of this is I ran the jumper and I didn't hear anything. I thought about it a little bit more, and I thought maybe I don't have that wired properly. I didn't run the wire correctly. I went back out, filled with it a bit more, ran the wire, jumped it, and I got a good spark at the solenoid, and I got a click. And I thought, rats, because solenoids are cheap. And they're generally easy to replace. This one was integrated into the starter, but I think I could have replaced it if it had been bad. I think I could have replaced it with an aftermarket solenoid. So rats, that's not the issue. So now there are two possibilities. It seems one is a bad starter, and the other is a bad ignition. Whether the ignition switch itself is bad or it's bad wiring, I don't know, but it could be either the starter itself or the ignition itself. The way that you check the starter is by jumping it. You just bypass the solenoid. And you do this with, very, very carefully, you do this with a screwdriver. Because although it's only 12 volts, it's 800, in this Backhoe, 880 amps that's flowing through it. So you want to be pretty careful with this, and you make the two connections between the solenoid and the positive lead on the starter, and if keys in the on position, you do that, it should crank right up, and it didn't crank right up. It did this. Yeah, it just went clunk, and that was it. So I thought, okay, yay, at least I know the problem is the starter. Rats. Because the starters for this thing cost about $800. I was thinking, son of a gun. So once again, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get this starter. My Spanish is improving, but it's not to the point where I can really carry on a conversation with part suppliers here. There's a JCB part supplier in the town of Caguas, which is just south of San Juan. So it's about a 2-hour drive. So that could have worked. Um, but in fact, I was thinking about them for the relay, but there's no way that I was really going to be able to discuss this with them with a relay. But now that I know that it's a starter, I sent them a instant message or something and said, hey, here's my backhoe, here's model and the data manufacturer, and most importantly the serial number. And I said, I need a starter motor. What can you do? But I was going to be in Virginia again. This was now in early November, and I was returning to November to celebrate Hampton City's 250th anniversary. So I found a heavy equipment supply place in Ashland, Virginia, and I thought, let's see what they can do, And if I can pick one up there, I'll just bring it home in my luggage. And folks in Ashland, I wrote to them. They said, yeah, we'll let you know what we can do. They were very nice. I wrote back the next day and they said, we can get you one. It's on back order. It won't be available until the middle of January at the earliest, and it's $800. And of course, I told them, look, I live in Puerto Rico, and I was hoping to bring this home with me in my luggage, so this isn't going to work. Thanks for looking. The place in Caguas, here on the island, wound up telling me exactly the same thing. It's unavailable at the moment. It's on back order. Will be available middle of January, $800. So what I wound up doing was buying one on eBay. It was a lot less expensive. It's sort of aftermarket starter, and it looked right. The only thing is there was a plastic cover over the solenoid, and as I said, the solenoid is integrated. It's built into the starter motor itself. So I couldn't see the connections there to verify that it was in fact an exact match. But it, everything that the listings on eBay said suggested that it was. So I ordered that. It arrived actually before I left right before I left for Virginia. So it was sitting on here in the townhouse waiting for me for when I returned. And I got back, opened up the box, pulled that cover off, and sure enough, everything matches up. Now this thing's heavy. It weighs 35 or 40 pounds. And I was not looking forward to working on it. But, that's what I've got to do. And normally I don't mind working on this backhoe. I don't want to do a lot of it, but it's kind of nice working on a big diesel engine because it's just, there it is, and everything kind of bolts onto it. It's not that difficult getting around. In this case, the starter was kind of difficult to get to because it's behind some of the framing members of the backhoe. But it was a real knuckle buster, and it caused me some problems. But I eventually got that sucker on, as we will see. Got to do this by feel. Oh, man. Oh. All right. This is what I'm trying to remove. And I've got this nut off of there and this nut off of there, but there's a nut right here behind all of this. This is the solenoid that I just removed. This piece here is all part of the starter, and it's here's where it mounts into the engine, and I'm facing it from this direction, and I'm trying to get to a nut that's right here, and the body of the starter won't let me get a socket in there because it wants to come in at an angle. I can't do that, and I can't get a wrench in there because I can't get the wrench past here, and with some clearance around the motor. So I'm having a devil of a time with this. Oh, removing the starter was a good idea, but not really doing the trick. Holy crap! Well, that explains it. Huh. Now I know how they got that nut on there. They didn't. It's supposed to be bolted on with 3 of these. It was only held on with 2. Oh. Okay. Well, that's encouraging. Oh. Because there's absolutely no way to get this thing on there. Whoever engineered this shouldn't simply be fired. They should be executed in a very slow and painful way. And this is crazy. You know, looking at this, I was thinking, how the heck do you put that on? Do you remove other parts that are in the way, kind of like the solenoid? That didn't help. Some other stuff in here that maybe could be removed. Nope, you just don't put the bolt on. Brilliant. Brilliant. All right. Out with the old, in with the new. Crazy. Oh. Easy peasy. Go on, get in there. Here they are, side by side. Obviously, the new one's on the right. This right here is the stud that is in the way, and you can see that's the original one here, and it's in fact much shorter. So what I am going to do is put all of my hardware on, and then cut that with this one here with my grinder. Just past where that bolt, or where that nut stops, so that I'll have enough space to get all of this hardware on, get my, this is where my neutral connects. And of course that lock washer there, just spinning rapidly here. I can tighten that down a little bit, but I can cut all of that off, and I think that's going to be enough to let me get this past the obstruction. Let me show you that if I can. So that's where it goes, right in there, turns that gear, but that threaded post, it's in the way, it's hitting against this pipe, and that simply can't be, well, easily removed. I guess I could pull all of this stuff off, but my God, that would be tremendous pain. So that's the issue. That's where she's trying to go, and there's just not quite enough clearance. It's hitting right here. All right, back in a bit. that was ugly. I don't have a cutoff wheel with me. I've got this blade, which is in fact made for this, but, well, for cutting metal at least. Much better for sheet metal, like that corrugated tin. That's why I brought it out here. I want to cut some of that. Oh well. Do a bad cut, grind it and try and make it look pretty. You know what they say, 17th time is a charm. Wish I had a much cleaner place to do this. Trying to keep all this grass out of my starter. Not that the engine's all that clean, mind you. All right. Fighting with 35 pounds again. Son of a gun. Okay. Right there. Yeah! Woo! Oh, yeah. Finally. Woo. Okay, and we're back. Finally, last time, I promise. Enough of the fingery stuff. So, unfortunately, the battery in the camera dies, and so you don't get to see me crank this thing up because it cranked up. Yay! And I was sort of tempted to recreate it, and I thought, oh, to hell with it. I'm not going to do that. But yep, I hopped in, keys off, I turned the key, and it went vroom, cranked right up, which was a bit of a problem because the ignition has three positions, right? All the way to the left. You know this if you drive a car now, old cars, because everything's got push button stuff. But you know, all the way to the left is just off. You know, you might have headlights or something, but off. One turn and it's in the run position, right? And all of the electrics work. And then the third position, which is spring loaded, is the start position. And you do that, and what that does is sends current to the solenoid, and that activates the starter and starts it up. And when you release the key and it rocks back, that breaks current going to the solenoid and stops the starter from running. So off, run, start, and my backhoe was off, and I turned to run, and it started, which was great. Yay, it's running, but it's not good because actually my starter is still kind of running there. So I don't want that. I need to fix that. Well, I also need to get this thing off the beach. or around and into the driveway where I can get the hydraulics worked on. So I go ahead and drive it down the beach and into my driveway and park it there, and that's fine. The one thing I noticed that was a little disconcerting, a little puzzling for me as well, is that when I shifted from reverse into neutral or forward into neutral, I heard a little bit of grinding. And I thought, I think that's the starter, which is bad, admittedly, but I'm pretty confident that's the starter. And when I fix that, I think it'll go away. And it did, is the short of this. So what I wound up doing, the solution to this is actually very simple. With the ignition, there's just a wire, a positive wire that runs from the ignition to the solenoid, and all I did was cut it. And I put a push button, 12-volt push button switch in between there, so that the way I start the backhoe now is from the off position, turn it to run, and then I press this starter button, boom, it cranks it up. I release the starter button, and there's no power to the solenoid anymore. There's no power to the starter, and everything's fine. And you can switch it from reverse into neutral or forward into neutral, and it's silent. There's no grinding, no nothing. Everything's fine. So at this point, yay! The backhoe cranks. It moves. It runs. Everything's fine. I just need to get the seals replaced for that hydraulic cylinder. And Christmas has interfered, and Three Kings Day has interfered, but I sent my mechanic a text. We were chatting a bit, and he pointed out that very, very wisely that cylinders work in tandem. They work in pairs. Hydraulic cylinders push, they don't pull. So to move the excavator backhoe to one side, you've got to push on the opposite side, and then you got to push it back. So those two cylinders are plumbed together. And he said, if the seals are bad in one, the seals are likely to go bad soon in the other. You just replace them both at the same time. And that's just sound advice. And I only had the seals for one cylinder, so I had to delay the repair so that I could order seals. I got them off of eBay again. Took a couple of weeks to get here. When they arrived, we're now, it may have been Christmas Eve. I mean, it was really close. So now we've got to wait through the entire Christmas season. Oh well, that's okay. But it's now approaching the weekend after Three Kings Day. I think today's the 8th or the 9th. So I'm hoping I'll be able to, he'll answer my text and he'll come on out and replace those seals for me. And with luck, the backhoe will be fully operational by this time next week. By the weekend, no later than the weekend next week. So when that happens, I'm hoping we're going to stop a lot of this talking head kind of stuff, and you're gonna see me tearing stuff up, ripping up trees and cutting in that driveway. So stay tuned for that, because that ought to be really exciting. Thank you so much for following along with all of this, the trials and tribulations. Not a lot of tribulations yet. I mean, I guess some. It's running again. Yay! But I'm not working with it yet. So I'm hoping to do that very, very soon. Stick around for that. Subscribe if you will, so that you don't miss that video. Share this, please, with anyone that you think might be interested. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and most importantly, drop a comment down below. If you were screaming at the at the screen, going, "Warner, you idiot! It's the starter! It's the starter!" Right? Just like Warner, you idiot! Why didn't you use PB Blaster? Fine. Let me know. Let me know if, like me, you absolutely hate electrical problems, because it could be just so many different things. But if me, you're celebrating with me, let me know. Also, if there's anything that you want me to talk about, there's a lot going on in the world right now, and for those of you who are not students of mine, I was a professor of foreign affairs for 25 years, and I taught foreign affairs unlike anyone else in the country. I can pretty well guarantee that. I think I my in grad school my training was in Asian, particularly Southeast Asian politics. So I taught Asian politics at Hampton City, but I also taught Latin America and I also taught the Middle East. And let's face it, there's a lot going on in all three of those places, and a good bit of it linked together. There's also stuff going on domestically, and while I'm a foreign affairs guy, there's I understand the law, I understand the Constitution, I understand sort of how these things sort of operate. And for 15 years, I was the director of the Center for the Study of the Constitution and International Association of Scholars of American Constitutional Law. So, if you want to talk politics, I'll still talk about politics. I am retired, but if you want to know what I'm thinking about things, let me know. I've got another video coming up because I've had someone ask me about cocktails based on a particular spirit. So I'm working on that. I'm happy to do, certainly happy to do cocktail recipes, cocktail videos if that's what you want. But I will certainly do more work on the property videos. That's kind of bread and butter sort of stuff here. But again, drop me a note in the comments and let me know what you'd like to hear from me, and I'll certainly consider it. Anyway, stick around because there's more exciting stuff. Hopefully, some really productive videos coming up soon. See you then.